Hello, my friends. Pastor Mark back again. This is week 11 of 12 of this series of children's Bible stories by request. Today is a very strange one. Today's story is a little crazy. It talks about joy in suffering. Yeah, that was really a request I received to talk about. That does sound a little weird, isn't it? But here we go. There are people who have difficult times, really bad times. I'm talking about illnesses. They can be depressed. They might have an emotional difficulty. I know some people who've even lost their houses and have had to live in a shelter. These are horrible things. Can you ever feel joy in such circumstances? I'm not sure I could. Fortunately, I've never had really grave difficulties. I've been very fortunate in life, and I thank God for that. But there are some people who've had it much more difficultly than I have. Here's one. This is from Road Trip with Raj from Unsplash. Someone who is in deep grief. Have you ever been in really deep grief? I've had times of grief. My parents have passed away. My sister died quite suddenly. And yes, there are times when there is grief. Does it last forever? Not for most people. I had grief, and I still feel a bit of grief from dead loved ones. But life is good, and I still go on. How about depression? I know people who've been depressed for a very long time. Depression is difficult. This one is from Lada Vigorova from Unsplash. When someone is long term depressed, they can't see any hope in the future. They can't see any alternatives to the way they are now living, the difficulties they are now in. Can such people really feel joy? Not my experience. What what's different from being grief stricken or feeling grief to being depressed? What's different from having a difficult time and feeling hopeless? How come people, when they're seriously ill, some of them seem to be at peace and others have such difficulty, sometimes even anger? Well, in at least a lot of cases, I think the difference is whether you know Jesus, whether you love Jesus, whether you trust Jesus. You see, I've had some bad illnesses, but I trusted that if I died, I'd be in the hands of Jesus. And I trusted that just perhaps I would get healed enough to not have the illness really bad. See, I think I could have been depressed if I didn't know Jesus had my back. Jesus was on my side. And I think everything works out for good if we love Jesus. How about depression? My sister died suddenly. She didn't show up for work, and her work called me. And I had to drive down, and I found her after she had died. Yeah, I felt grief. I felt mourning. There's no question about it. But even when I was feeling that, I knew it would not last forever because I knew Jesus would heal me. And I knew, despite never seeing her again, my life could still be good and rich. In my life as a minister, and in my 6 years of volunteering as a hospital chaplain, I was with a lot of people who were dying and who did die. And there's a big difference between people who know Jesus and people who don't. People who knew Jesus, they were confident that when they died, they would be living with him for all eternity. And when their families had come to bless them, well, they died peacefully. Some of them knew that their pain would be over, and they even died joyfully. People who don't know Jesus, people who have regrets, people who don't have confidence and trust God, they die more difficult deaths. We're all going to have bad things happen, whether they're economic, whether they're estrangement in relations, whether it's illnesses. I don't know. I don't know what's going to face you or I'll be facing. But if we know Jesus and we trust him, we can even feel joy and peace in the midst of the difficulties. Now, if we don't trust Jesus, or if we don't know him, or we don't like him, well, we're not going to feel the same joy and peace when we hit the difficult times of life. It's up to us. Do we know Jesus? Do we love him? Do we do what he requires of us? If so, we've got a deep spiritual resource that will get us through all difficulties. And you know what? Even in the midst of bad times, we'll know joy, we'll know peace. So that, my friends, is our Bible teaching about joy and peace in the midst of difficulties. I hope this helps you, because I know sometimes everyone goes through difficulties. Or another way to put it, everyone goes through difficulties sometimes. This is Pastor Mark of Clinton Avenue Reformed Church, wishing you God's blessing this week. And I pray that you'll listen to this, like it, comment, and share it. I want more people to hear these Bible stories. God bless you today and all days.